There is a single moment that decides everything. A split second when someone calls you out, questions your intent, attacks your character, or tries to pin a label on you. In that moment, most people do the same thing they were trained to do across a lifetime. They defend themselves. They explain. They justify. They plead for understanding. It feels natural, even noble, because we want our name and our story to be right. But there is a cost. The second you step forward to defend, you hand the microphone to your accuser. You accept their frame. You admit that their judgment has the right to be heard. You hand them the narrative and, with it, control. If you want to learn how to turn the moment against the accuser, how to transform an attack into a collapse of their credibility, stick with me to the end of this video. If you want more deep breakdowns on influence, presence, and how perception shapes power, subscribe now so you do not miss what comes next. Pay attention to how the world interprets movement. When you explain, you move into the other person's territory. You answer the question they posed, and that means you accepted that the question mattered. When you stay still, when you withhold the expected defense, you make the question look uncertain. You make people wonder. You force those who watch to fill in the silence. The most powerful people you have seen were not always the loudest. They were the ones who made silence feel heavy. They made others flinch because their stillness suggested knowledge, danger, and unbothered confidence. The lesson we will walk through is simple in idea and subtle in practice. It is about choosing presence over panic, posture over pleading, and strategy over reaction. First, understand why the reflex to defend is so strong. Human beings evolved in social groups. Reputation mattered. Threats to reputation triggered immediate responses because being ostracized could be deadly in a primitive context. That reflex persists, but the world has changed. Immediate defense buys you temporary relief but long-term strategic weakness. When you justify, you accept the idea that someone else can define you in that instant. You trade agency for short-term reassurance. The alternative is to treat the accusation as noise and to recognize that silence is not surrender. Silence is invitation. It invites interpretation. Most people will interpret that silence the same way. Something about the accused is too big to be explained away. That is the psychological currency of power. Now let us build a mental toolkit that you can practice. The first tool is silence used with presence. Stillness is not blankness. It is a chosen state full of controlled breathing, steady eyes, and a calm face. When you are faced with a jab, do not hurry to speak. Slow your breath. Let the moment breathe itself. The room will start to look for signals. People look to you. If you move first to defend, the energy has already shifted against you. If you hold silence, they are forced to look for meaning where there is none. In that absence, they usually project weakness, doubt, or even guilt. That projection is your leverage. The second tool is inversion. Instead of saying you are not what they claim, make the accusation reflect back on them as a question about their motives or state. If someone calls you manipulative, respond with a cool, steady voice. I can see why someone who cannot lead would call influence manipulation. If they call you arrogant, reply calmly. Confidence looks different depending on who is seeing it. These lines are not apologies. They do not defend an allegation. They reframe it and make the accuser explain themselves. When they chase their own claim to justify it, they start to look small. The third tool is deflection and redirect. When someone undermines your idea in a meeting, do not take the bait. Instead of justifying, ask for their idea. Say something like, I want to understand your approach. Walk me through your method. By redirecting the energy back to them, you force them to perform. They have to show competence. The audience now evaluates the accuser. The spotlight shifts. You win not by rebuttal but by gently turning the stage. The fourth tool is disappearance. This is subtler and requires restraint. Do not bite when baited. Do not block out of pride. Let your absence be a mirror. When you do not engage, many accusers will struggle. They will keep pushing to get a reaction. They will post more. They will speak to others. Each attempt makes them look less measured and more obsessed. Their pattern becomes visible. You remain untouched. Practice these tools in different environments. Imagine you walk into a room and someone makes a public jab about your past or your motives. The crowd looks to you. The instinctive script says explain, prove, justify. The advanced script says remain still, scan the room with composed eyes, and then choose one small move. A quiet tilt of the head. A measured line such as, "Is that how you see it?" That tiny phrase does two things. It refuses the frame and it forces the speaker to articulate their claim. By asking them to own the words they used, you turn the table. People will watch how the accuser behaves when pressed to clarify. Most will crumble. If the accuser doubles down, let them. Their escalation is their exposure. Think about a business meeting. Someone says your plan lacks depth. The nervous reply is to go into details and to defend. A Machiavellian operator leans back, breathes, and then says with measured curiosity, "Tell me where you see risk in that plan." This shifts responsibility and pressure onto the critic. The critic must now perform. If they fail, their point collapses in front of others. If they succeed, you now have their critiques to use. That is strategic. You never want to be dragged into playing defense on someone else's terms. In personal relationships, the effect is emotional and often sharper. When a partner says you do not care, a frantic defense might sound like earnestness, but it validates their emotional frame. A composed response that states, "That is not how I experience things," followed by silence, makes them question their certainty. They will have to parse their feelings. That parsing can slow down dramatic escalation and often leads to more honest conversation afterwards. This is not emotional cruelty. It is controlled influence. You still care, but you refuse to be owned by someone else's emotional demand. Online, the rules appear different, but the psychology is the same. Trolls rely on you to supply oxygen. Sprawling defenses, long clarifications, and emotional posts are fuel. The online Machiavellian uses short, status-affirming statements, or strategically reframes the claim into the crowd. A simple post that reframes accusation into a feature of leadership will often make the original accuser appear reactionary. The crowd then decides whose narrative is easier to accept. In most cases, the over-explainer loses credibility. There are short verbal moves that are tremendously effective when used sparingly. Use these kinds of status assertions. If someone says you are full of yourself, say, "Confidence creates discomfort in those who do not share it." If someone says you are fake, say, "Authenticity is not owed." If someone says you think you are better than everyone, say, "I simply make choices others will not." These are not explanations. They are assertions that maintain status. They do not open doors for more argument. They close the scene by shifting judgment elsewhere. Your posture matters as much as your phrases. Train your facial muscles to neutral calm. Practice a soft, steady gaze that does not seek approval. Slow your exhale before you speak. Let your jaw relax. These micro-adjustments change how others read you. Silence combined with full-bodied presence reads as control. The person who holds their calm breath while others spasm looks larger in the room. Beware of common pitfalls. Silence is powerful only when it reads as chosen. If you appear rattled and then freeze, people will think you are stunned. That is why posture and breath must precede silence. Another trap is using silence as passive avoidance. There is a difference between strategic stillness and disengagement due to fear. If you ignore everything because you are afraid, you lose social currency. The practiced operator chooses when to speak. They do not avoid living. Another advanced tactic is to let others defend you without asking. When you refuse to justify, sometimes allies will step in and defend you in front of the crowd. There is no greater leverage than having other people advocate for your character without your solicitation. That dynamic suggests you are above petty contest and that your presence generates loyalty. Building that support takes time. It requires consistent behavior that demonstrates steadiness so that people will instinctively back you. Now consider the emotional mechanics behind why attackers escalate when you do not react. Attackers are often seeking validation of power. They want to see you rattle. If you remain calm, they have little to prove. In public spaces, the audience looks for drama. Silence deprives them. The attacker then has to make themselves louder or more extreme to regain center stage, and that extremity makes them look unstable. It is a slow social collapse. You do not force it. You create the conditions where it happens. Let us describe a practice routine so you can internalize these moves. Begin each day with a few minutes of breath control. Learn to breathe in through your nose and out through a long, controlled mouth exhale. Practice holding a neutral face in the mirror for brief intervals. Ask a friend to throw a mild provocation at you while you use only silence and one short, prepared sentence in response. Repeat until the silence does not feel like absence but like a tool. Then practice the inversion lines until they sound natural. Authenticity in delivery is key. There are moments when a short, decisive comment is the correct move. Use these like precision cuts. Say what you want in a single line and then stop. Not every exchange requires silence. Sometimes you must land a phrase that ends the scene. The difference between a defense and a precision cut is intention. A defense asks for permission to be believed. A precision cut asserts status and then closes the floor. Examples of precision cuts are spare and final. They should not invite more conversation. In the digital world, your precision cuts can be a single post that reframes the accusation instead of explaining it. Keep it short. Keep it clean. Let your community do the rest. If you have cultivated an audience that sees you through the lens you prefer, they will often provide cover. We must also address a moral perspective. These techniques can look cold. They are not about cruelty. They are about self-possession. Using silence as a tool is different from ignoring people in malice. The intention matters. Use these strategies to preserve your center and to avoid being manipulated by others who seek drama. If someone is genuinely hurt, you can show care through action, not through frantic justification. Let your behavior over time be the proof. A few situational scripts you can adapt in your voice are useful to memorize. When someone publicly accuses you of bad intent, say nothing for a controlled beat, then speak one short line that does not explain. For instance, "That is not my experience of this," followed by silence. In a meeting, when someone undermines your plan, ask calmly, "Can you walk me through how you would approach that?" In a romantic conflict where the other claims you do not care, say, "I hear you," and then hold still, allowing the conversation to continue without panic. Online, if someone calls you toxic, post a brief line that reframes the claim into the accuser's motive, and then disengage. These lines are small but potent. You will be tempted to test these strategies in situations that matter more than your practice sessions. Resist the urge to perfect them under public pressure. Start small. Practice with friends. Practice in low-stakes conversations. Build a habit. The quiet composure you cultivate will become second nature. Over time, you will notice a shift. People will stop testing you with petty provocation. They will sense a boundary. They will think twice before throwing a jab because the room's reaction will not be predictable drama but controlled inquiry. That uncertainty is what makes them cautious. Another layer is reputation design. You do not simply react once and expect results. You build an aura by consistent choices. People remember patterns more than single events. If you decline to fight over small slights repeatedly, your reputation changes. Others will begin to assume you are not easily shaken. They will fill in the silence with assumptions about your depth, strength, and capability. That is cultural leverage. It takes time but compounds. There are also times when it is better to explain, but those times are your choice, not a reflex. Choose to speak only when speaking will shift power, not when it will nervously defend it. If an explanation can change the structural outcome in your favor, Prepare it carefully and deliver it as a statement, not a plea. Keep it crisp. Make it about facts or values, never about proving your worth in real time. Remember that being untouchable does not mean being unkind. You can be generous in action, disciplined in speech, and selective in what you care to rebut. The goal is not to be cold-hearted. It is to be effective. People confuse sensitivity with surrender. You can be fully human and still refuse to be owned by immediate accusations. Finally, we arrive at presence as a daily practice. Presence is built through ritual. It grows from small habits like controlled breathing, measured posture, clear boundaries, and selective speech. Presence translates into less argument and more authority. It makes silence not a gap but a weapon of influence. When people see your calm repeated over time, they will stop throwing cheap jabs because the cost looks high. They will know that you do not play by the rules of reaction. If you commit to this path, expect a gradual shift. Do not measure success by the number of opponents you silence. Measure success by the number of times you stay steady where you would have faltered before, by the people who quietly step up on your behalf, and by the space you create to do your work without distraction. You will not win every contest, but you will change the field on which contests are fought. If you found value in this breakdown and want more content that teaches how to shape perception and command rooms without aggression, subscribe now and click the like button so the channel can make more videos like this. Share this video with someone who could use a calmer approach to conflict. Leave a comment below and tell a short story about a time when silence helped you or when it would have helped. Which tactic will you try first? Silence, inversion, deflection, or a precision cut? Do you think silence is cowardice or strength? Tell us the toughest situation you face when provoked, and I will respond to a handful of the best comments in the next video. If you want deeper practice, say so in the comments and I will make guided exercises you can use to train your presence daily. If this video changed your view about defending yourself, consider subscribing so you do not miss the next breakdown where we will study how to build an unshakable reputation through consistent small moves. Thank you for watching. Stay composed, choose stillness, and let others reveal themselves.